Just because you offer seller financing doesn't mean your seller is actually going to do seller financing.
If you're a buyer out there watching this, there's some strategy, there's some game theory in here.
With our seller financing program, sellers don't actually have to have the house paid off. They can actually leverage a below market interest rate that they currently have. This is a huge marketing tool that's free.
Hey, I am here today with Ryan Leahy, and I have a problem, and I heard that you can solve it. Can I tell you a little bit about what's going on, and maybe you can talk to me a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely, Kelly.
Great. Well, I've got sellers that are on the market right now, and the market is slowed dramatically. Interest rates are really high, not really high, but right now, whoever's watching this, we're at about 6.75 to 7%. And the only solution is to offer concessions or lower the price. So we're seeing like our luxury properties really take a hit with some low offers that are really below market value. And I understand that you have a solution to that problem, and I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. So what I've done is I have created a program that brings back seller financing. And with our seller financing program, sellers don't actually have to have the house paid off. They can actually leverage a below market interest rate that they currently have. 70% of all homeowners out there have an interest rate below 4%. But they don't want to actually do any more price cuts. Most sellers have done, a lot of sellers, I should say, have done 2 or 3 price cuts already, Kelly, and agents are really out there struggling to find another tool other than a price drop to market the home. And that's where more seller financing comes in.
Well, I'm super excited. And in true transparency and honesty, that was actually our hook to get you to watch this video. But I have had major win, my very first win that we're going to talk about today. So please stay tuned. Watch this episode. I'm going to show you how I just got one of those difficult to sell homes. 3 offers first weekend using your techniques for marketing these properties. But before we go there, let's kind of back up and hear a little bit about who you are, the name of your company, and exactly what you guys are doing.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. So my name again is Ryan Leahy, and I'm the founder of More Seller Financing. I've been in the lending business for 23 years and been really blessed. And I was able to grow a significant size team through 2022. And by the end of 2022, I had 3 rounds of layoffs. And in December, I was just going, there's got to be a better way than waiting on the Fed to cut interest rates to start stimulating buyer activity.
Yeah.
And so, a matter of fact, I was talking with my mother on third generation real estate, and my mom said, "Honey, back in the day, we just did seller financing wraps." And I started looking into what that was. I'd heard about them, but never paid attention to it because we didn't have a viable way or a market that made sense. And really, Kelly, when I had heard seller financing, I was always like, ooh, like we deal with highly qualified home buyers. Our sweet spot is going to be, 600 to 3 million. That just didn't sound like that was a seller financing type of transaction or client for us. And so what I did is I started researching what would it look like if we could show a seller how to not lose their 3% interest rate plus or minus that they have.
Sure. Yeah.
A lot of our sellers have great interest rates. I mean, I know a lot of your sellers do because I'm looking at the numbers on the listings you're sending me, and we've got one that's 2.75% that we'll talk about in a little bit. And so these sellers, they don't want to lose this rate. The other part about it is buyers haven't forgotten about the 3% rates that they didn't get,
Yes.
and so they still want that, or they want a sales price that is so much further lower than the market or what the sellers are willing to accept, that it's going to offset the higher interest rate to quote unquote get them that lower payment.
And
And we
I
just
I
got to,
actually have buyers that call the office that are looking for us to find homes where the loans are assumable. And so I want you to put a pin in that because you found a solution to that too. I want to make sure that we come back to that as well. But please keep going.
Yeah, thanks. And so what we figured out was how a way to show sellers how to offer a below market interest rate using seller financing for generally a short term, like 3 years. And we actually counsel the sellers. So we're a seller financing consulting company, and through our consulting, we help a seller kind of craft and understand what becoming the bank would look like, but how to only do it for a highly qualified home buyer, because we make sure that all of the buyers are pre-approved and that we give the agent another tool to market this below market interest rate. So they have something else other than a price drop to try to stimulate that buyer activity. And it's actually been working really well.
Yeah, we're huge fans. And so we're going to break down some of my properties today. But one of the things I wanted to say is that we're actually just using it as a marketing tool, and our sellers get the opportunity to choose whether or not they actually want to do the wrap. But before we go any further, if anyone else is in the mortgage industry, like I grew up in the mortgage industry, the first conversation we had, I think it was an hour. I was driving back from Southern California from our family vacation, and I was like, wait a second, what about the due on sale clause? So I'd love for all those people who are thinking that right now, you to address that same question for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So what are the risks when you're doing seller financing wraps? The big one that comes up is the due on sale clause. So there's a couple of things that we have done. We found two law firms that have closed more than 25,000 seller financing wrap transactions. And this is over a 20-year plus period of time, and because of the way on how they structure them, the due on sale clause has never been put in force. And so how this works is, we do put the property usually into a trust if that's what the seller chooses to do, or the seller can not put it in a trust. Again, ultimately, all the decisions are up to the seller. They are the lender. And so we counsel them on the pros and the cons of the way to structure their own seller financing transaction, so that they can decide what fits best for them. But in the event that it comes up, we're there. So we manage the transaction for the life of that seller financing loan. So if a due on sale clause comes up, our attorneys are on the phone with the lender and explaining to them either how this is going to work, or the remedies that we need to do. And we get sometimes creative, but the law firms that do this, they've got three separate remedies that work really well. And in the event that, there's always the first, that we always say it hasn't happened yet, but there will be a first. Then we also offer a due on sale assurance package that the sellers can purchase. And a lot of times that cost of that is split with the buyers, or the buyers pay for it as well. And in the event of a due on sale clause coming up and a remedy, the remedy is not being effective, which hasn't happened yet over more than 20 years and more than 25,000 transactions, then we have an assurance plan that would come in and do a refinance for that home buyer and or pay off the seller in the event the home buyer can't get in the event of a due on sale being put in force.
Okay. Yeah. So then I'm sure that if they are a real estate agent out there or a seller, they're thinking, well, this sounds just too good to be true, Ryan. So what would the cost to, have this, fleet of attorneys that have done over 25,000, you guys managing it from end to end? Like what is the cost, and why are you guys doing it? So why don't you answer
Yeah,
that?
you bet. So the cost it's 2% of the sales price for a wrap transaction. So and it's going to be capped at $25,000 per side. So a total of $50,000. And because we have several of our sellers are $2, $3, $4 million sellers that are looking to offer seller financing at below market interest rates. And so we do have a cap in there. If the property is owned outright, is only 1% of the sales price. Most of the time, by the way, so the 2%, most of the time, the seller pushes one of that percent to the buyer. So the seller ends up paying 1% and the buyer pays 1%.
So, for
There's then,
example, if it was an $800,000 purchase price, the total fee would be $16,000 and the
correct?
buyer would pay 8,000 and the seller would pay 8,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so that doesn't seem like enough profit to take all this on. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a lot of work. I see the amount of counseling that's been going into these, sellers and even the buyers explaining the program. So is there a hope that something else would come out of it for you guys? Explain that
You
long-term vision.
Yeah, you bet, Kelly. You are correct. So we are a lending company. So our goal, we part of the managing the transaction for the life of the loan is we are the built-in exit strategy. So our job is to refinance that home buyer as fast as humanly possible. Because generally, remember these seller financing transactions, they end up usually as short term. So they're 2, 3, 4 years. And so we're calling those home buyers saying, hey, by the way, if it was a 3-year seller bridge loan, you got 2 years, 6 months left. You've got 2 years, 3 months left. Let's go ahead and get refinanced. Let's get refinanced. So we're in it for the refinance. And you are right. At the current cost of 2 points, and it does have some transaction fees. The more fee is 2 points. Then you have some attorney's fees of about 2,500, and if a trust is if they want to do the trust, it's usually 1,250. So it's about 3,750 in attorney's costs, and then you have traditional transaction fees of title insurance,
But I just want to
and the other
remind
ancillary
our
fees.
viewers that are watching this show that we're getting 25, 50, 100, $200,000 offers below asking right now in California where we are. So these fees are just nothing compared to what our sellers are currently losing.
Yeah, because Kelly, you are correct. One of the biggest parts about it is seller financing is full price, or it's a highly competitive offer.
Right.
And so the buyers are exchanging a really low interest rate for a higher sales price, which, believe it or not, they're willing to do. And
Right.
they did it in the droves between 2019 or 2019 and early 2022. People were paying over and above list.
Hmm.
So it's not uncommon if you can get a 4.49% interest rate, or even we have some sellers offering a 3.99% interest rate, or 4.99% interest rate for buyers to be really comfortable paying full price for a home or a highly competitive offer.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a specific example of how you've recently helped one of our sellers. So we have a property that is in El Dorado Hills, and we had it listed for I think 829 originally on the market. Actually, no, we decided to go at 825. It was on the market. It was on the market for about 30 days. It got an offer less than asking. And the original offer that came in, it was contingent on them selling their home. And we're like, no, we're not going to take less than asking and wait for you to sell your house. Sorry. So the offer was resubmitted back to us as a non contingent offer with a 14-day inspection contingency period. Lo and behold, they did no additional inspections, but they canceled on day 14. What they had done is they had put their house on the market to test the market to see if their house would sell quickly because they were considering doing a bridge loan. So they canceled on us. And as soon as your house goes pending and then back on the market, everyone's like, what's wrong? What's wrong with this house? And the reality is, there was nothing wrong with the house. It was somebody who was locking us down. So now here we are, 66 days on the market, and showings have dwindled. I'm talking like none in 2 weeks. So we reached out to the sellers and we asked them what their current interest rate was. And it was a little bit more challenging because they had a first and a second on this particular property. And the husband and wife are it's the most beautiful separation I've ever seen. They're so kind and loving towards each other. They're still best friends, but they're two separate households and they're managing this third one. And then what our company does is we help our sellers kind of flip their property, and we often, for a fee, will use our own funds. So I'm invested about $26,000 out of pocket on a quick little fix and flip for this property. So the house is flat and it's affecting all of us. We all have skin in the game. So we came to you guys and you offered us a scenario where, in this particular case, the seller could offer the buyer an interest rate of 4.99 with 20% down. But what we really needed was 25% down because that paid off, everything. So instead, on that 25% down, we offered a rate at 4.5. Now, we haven't
4.4.
explained to the viewers how this whole thing works. So we will get there. I just want, if you're a real estate agent or a seller, for you to see how it works, like on a practical scale first, and then we'll dive into the numbers. But in this particular case, we took the house off the market and we did a price reduction to $799, and we offered this super low interest rate. So now $25,000 price reduction in my market is not a big reduction. The first offer came in super low. I can't even say what it is because we're not locked in contract yet. But needless to say, it hit hard, right? And then the second offer came in and they really wanted that financing. So they wrote 10,000 over asking, right? So the spread there is really big. And now I've got a third offer coming in as well. All because, we did both things. We didn't just do a price reduction. We did a price reduction in combination with an incentive. We use this as an opportunity to draw out more buyers and to show them, in this particular case, the payment using your seller wrap program was like $900 less a month for the buyer.
You hit the nail on the head, Kelly. And I want to compliment you real quick too, because what we have found, we launched our program at the end of 2023. And what we have found is so many agents are choosing to either continue to try to wait out the market, or they just don't want to do anything different. And I really want to compliment you about
Thanks.
leading the charge and how you are doing. You're offering to fix up some of these houses, and you're having to really put skin in the game, and you're thinking creatively. And you took this on with an open mind, and this is what we're going to do. And we have found that the agents that are willing to do the work and willing to have the extra conversations are winning, just like you. Just because you offer seller financing doesn't mean your seller is actually going to do seller financing,
Right.
right? And that's what this is a huge marketing tool that's free,
Yeah.
no cost.
Yeah.
And so you're a direct beneficiary of that, because you have now you have two offers in
Yeah.
and another one coming in, because we started offering 4.49% for 25% down, and you could legally advertise that.
Yeah.
And so the more program, whether if they're offering seller financing or not, the incentive with the interest rate is really where buyers are focused. They're just not focused on price point, because at a 6.75 to 7% interest rate, it's still not low enough of an interest rate. Even if you drop the price by another 50,000, it still doesn't make up for the fact that at a 4.49% interest rate, it's still $900, $920 a month cheaper than at 6.75.
Right.
And so you just can't drop the price enough in order to equal it. And of course, the deal doesn't pencil when you drop the price so far. So great job on bringing this to
Thanks.
your
And
clients.
one of my little sales pitches, just so you know, to the buyer's agent is, hey, take that $900 a month and invest it in your savings so that you can do a buy down for yourself for your permanent interest rate. And so they're definitely pitching that. But I do want to back up and just give kudos to our seller. Fortunately, the seller of Ridgeview is in finance. So when he sat there and looked at it logically, he's like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. And here we're right now, as of today, we're at least $10,000 higher than our asking price. But the offers that would have continued to come in when we were priced at 825, if we were blessed enough to get one, it was all about us doing more for the buyers. Now the buyers are competing for our property. So it's definitely a win for the sellers. And I'm a huge fan of what you created. And I really feel blessed that you guys kind of let me get in here on the ground floor of this really cool, innovative idea. It's the first thing I've seen that's really fighting for the seller's equity ever. Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank
Yeah.
you. It is amazing because the seller, when they do seller financing, not only are they going to make the spread, the difference. Now, the way that your seller chose to do it is really almost at a break even from a cash flow perspective, meaning they're not going to make a huge spread on the monthly payment like a lot of sellers do. But that was only because your seller had a 15-year amortized first lien. So
Right.
what that means is your seller is making a tremendous amount of equity when they do the seller financing wrap because their current loan, while they don't even own the house anymore, it's deeded to the new buyer. The current loan is being paid down at an accelerated rate. And that's where this seller ends up making the majority of their profit.
Yeah, so I want to break down a scenario in just a few minutes of somebody that has a super low interest rate, that has equity in their home, that doesn't want to lose all the money that they've invested. So if that's someone like you that's watching this show, please stay tuned. We're going to dive into the numbers, how it works, all of that in just a second. But I do want to talk about one of the first questions that every seller asks me, Ryan. I'm just going to ask it to you, even though I'm sure you hear it 100 times a day. What happens if the buyer defaults? What happens if on, year two, they have some sort of, life emergency and they can no longer afford to make the payments?
Yeah, absolutely. You are right. So the first thing that comes up is due on sale. The second thing comes up is what happens if they default. So this is an eyes wide open transaction, in which what that means is we go into explaining both parties at the time of closing exactly what's going on, that it's a wrap, and that we have a mortgage servicing company that handles all the payments. And part of that is the other part of that is we have the buyers sign what's called a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And that deed in lieu of foreclosure states that if the buyer is 2 months behind on the mortgage payments, that the deed automatically transfers back to the seller without a judicial process in the states that's obviously allowed. And so that's what they do. And so that safeguards the seller. So in the event if 2 payments are missed, then the seller owns the property and now it just becomes an eviction.
And the
Yeah.
sellers are saying, so wait a second, I just got 20 or 25% down and now I'm getting the house back and I get to keep all the money. That just sounds too good to be true. And I told him it's how my grandfather made his millions in real estate is because he was the bank. And that's exactly what he would do, is the exact same thing. So
Yeah,
there,
I mean,
nobody wants that to happen, but it does financially benefit the seller. You just get that whole down payment and you get to resell the house again. And yes, you have to go through the eviction process, but you guys have already baked in the legal forms that are really the hard part, especially for me because I'm in California, right? So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is a morbid way to think of it. Christmas did come early, and you get to
Yes.
resell it, and of course, so that is never anybody enters. We don't enter into these transactions with that, and that is
Sure.
part
No.
of. Remember, we are pre-approving all the home buyers, so these are not home buyers that don't qualify. These are home buyers that just don't want to move forward with a 6.5, 7 or 6.5 to 7% interest rate, and so, but they are home buyers at 4.49.
Yeah.
They are home buyers at 499. And so it really is a great way to motivate the market and give the market exactly what they're asking for, which is just a low rate.
Heard. I'm doing the math right now on my calculator. So the people who have written on my property will save $33,408 as buyers. And so I want to talk about that for just a second. If you're a buyer out there watching this, right? This is some strategy. There's some game theory in here. So what would you tell other agents and buyers that are out there going, wait, you're right. Wait, there's 70% of the population sitting on these super low interest rates. What's happened in California is they don't want to move, right? Because they don't want to give up their 3% interest rate and get, a 6.75 or a 7. So let's talk about that as a buyer. How do you utilize this program?
Yeah, so we call that the More Buyers Program. And so if you are one of those buyers out there that has said, I'm just not going to move until rates are in the fours or the low fives or whatever that is, you no longer have to wait. So you need to call your agent and then get pre-approved with us. Once you're pre-approved with us, we will work with your agent. And how it works specifically is when you heart a property in MLS, your agent will send us that property that you hearted. And we ask when we go through the onboarding process and the pre-approval of the More Buyers program, we ask that it's a home that you could see yourself living in based on everything you can see online.
Yeah,
We
not every
will,
single house you look at, friends.
yeah, right. Exactly. Just don't go click 100 houses. Because we will then look up the mortgage information on that seller. And then we will contact the listing agent and ask them if they would be open to a seller financing transaction. And we will explain exactly how the seller wins and how the buyer wins. It's truly the only win-win circumstance that we've found. And Kelli, what we have found, if the property has been on the market longer than 60 days, it has about a 20 to 25% success ratio. If it's been on the market longer than 100 days, it's about a 40% success that sellers are willing to do seller financing. And if it's been on the market longer than 120 days, you've got over a 50% chance. And then for the home sellers that still are not interested, because of divorce or things happen, right, and not every seller is a good candidate, that then we say, well, that doesn't change the fact that we have a highly interest rate sensitive home buyer. So would you be willing to offer 2, 3, 4, 5 points to buy down the interest rate? We determine what that buy down looks like when we understand what our buyers' needs are. And then we just ask the seller, would you consider that for a for a competitive offer? Would you do the seller contributions? And then we'll go back, crunch the numbers for our buyers. And then we say, hey, Kelli, our buyers like this payment for this home. Will you go show it to them and make sure it's the one?
Yeah, love it. This is so smart. Now, there are a lot of scams out there. So, our broker, for example, was absolutely not no seller reps. We just don't do them here. I had to really take all of this information and explain how deep you guys have gone into the legal portion, especially having that deed in lieu signed, right there at the closing table to get it approved and the thumbs up. They're like, that's cool. No one else is doing that. So if you are watching this episode and you get an offer as a seller from something that is it looks like an assumable loan with no money down. We're seeing a ton of those, like in my email all day long. It's just, we want to make this offer on your property and we just want to take over the payments, right? So, do you want to have any caution warning labels for someone watching this? How do they tell who you are versus those guys that are doing that, if you will?
Yeah, thank you. So the number one big flag is our clients work with agents, and our clients are going to be submitting offers on your state promulgated purchase contract agreement, right? So what you're seeing for most of what's called the wholesalers and the others that are just trying to be opportunists, they issue letters of intent, LOIs. That's what's filling up your inbox. That's your first key and clue that is not that's a very creative program that probably doesn't benefit both parties. That's the best way
Right.
I'm going to say that.
Okay, we appreciate it. I just
um,
wanted to make sure that we talked about that because it's definitely there. And if you're an agent and your broker says absolutely no seller apps, definitely go a little further and show them exactly what More Financing is doing because it is not what anyone else in the market is doing that I've seen.
No, thank you. I mean, we've been through the compliance departments of the biggest real estate firms in the country, even publicly traded companies. And once they see the due diligence that goes in on the backside of this, we haven't had any pushback from it. So initially, most of them are like, nope, no seller financing wraps. And then they actually go through and really unpack it like you have, Kelli. And they have all agreed that we understand what's going on and this makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay, so are you ready to run a scenario with me?
absolutely.
Okay, it's really a cool one. So I got a call to go out to a listing presentation over the holiday weekend. I met this awesome couple. We became fast friends in a second, and they utilize a property in my market. I'm in El Dorado County, and they use it as a second home. It's a wonderful property. It's on a creek that's more like a river. And it's just, I mean, you can kayak in your backyard. There are like 10 properties in our county that has a backyard experience, if you will. And so what they did is they bought this property and they just started spending money. So they paid about 800,000 for it in 2020, and the seller is an accountant, and she has lined out every single penny that was spent and to who with receipts. You can just imagine the spreadsheet, right? And they are invested $1,075,000 in hard costs, not including their time. So they've added $100,000 solar system that makes the house run net zero. They've reconfigured the garage to add 2 offices with air conditioning. They put mini splits throughout the house. They've just really done a lot of work. And the most expensive was just this complete, beautiful kitchen remodel. Well, the market where we are has not had that much of a gain, and they don't want to lose all of the money that they've invested remodeling this home. And they have a second home in the Bay Area, and they're getting ready to retire, and they're thinking that they're going to live out of the country. So that's this really unique story. And so they have an interest rate that's 2.75. They owe about 500,000 on the mortgage. They'd love to get 1,075,000, for the house. And I do think that I've sold another property very similar off market, wasn't even put in MLS, and I just, mailed out to clients, and I sold another river property within a matter of weeks. So I thought if we offered this financing, um, we would definitely be able to try to get them out of their, you know, break even point, if you will. So what do you think? What would that look like? Tell us the money they would get out, and what would their monthly overage be? Because their rate is 2.75. If we offer a rate of, 4.99, they get to keep the spread, right, of what their rate actually is versus the rate that they're charging. That's the benefit. They get the higher price and they get the interest. So can you explain that and kind of break it down for somebody watching with this scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. Would you like me to do a screen share?
Sure.
All right. So let's see here. Kelly, this is a great property to take a look at for this. As you mentioned, they had a 2.75% interest rate with owing just a tad more than $500,000. Look at the wins that this seller gets to pick up by doing this marketing this seller financing. So again, Kelly's going to have another tool other than a price drop to market this property. Marketing this home at 4.99%, making this home the same monthly payment as this $1,050,000 home, the same monthly payment as an $865,000 home, saving the buyer $961 a month versus traditional financing. But let's take a look at the win. So the buyer in this case would be putting down 20% at a minimum to meet the seller's needs. Now, after more real estate commissions are paid, title policy, closing costs, the seller's going to net right about $128,000 cash in hand. But then look at this. This is where the magic of being a bank kicks in. So they're going to be paid every single month a monthly passive income. In this case, $2,181. So over the 3-year period of time, if we did a 3-year short-term bridge loan, that would mean this seller picked up an extra $78,000, 78,526. And then when we refinance that home buyer out of this out of the seller financing bridge loan, this seller is going to get paid the windfall of the dollars that are owed to them, which in this case is $343,000. So here's something that a lot of people say or ask me, okay, Ryan, I did seller financing. How much more money did I make compared to a traditional transaction? Yeah, so Kelly, what are you seeing as far as a traditional discount for a property of this in this current market?
In this current market, gosh, like 13 on the low, maybe even 15, 20% in some cases. Really, really depends on the property and if it has anything unique or special. This one does have something unbelievably unique. It's got the most incredible, who can kayak in their backyard. So it does have that Zaza Zoo, but in this case, let's just maybe use the 13%.
Perfect. I'll use that 13%. So with the 13%, what that's going to look like is this seller's going to net right at about $199,000 in more profit or total proceeds over that 3-year period of time. So what does that mean? What did your Kelly, do you remember what your seller originally wanted as a sales price for this home?
They wanted 1.2 originally.
1.2. So if a seller had 1.2 in their head, and now we're selling for right around $1,050,000, if they're able to pick up that gain, this almost $200,000, that puts them at 1.25. Now, that assumes a full price, but it's not uncommon. Seller financing is generally full price.
Yeah.
And the buyers that use our program often and all the time are highly qualified, self-employed home buyers. Or I've had realtors that purchase properties. And you know what? A lot of realtors need alternative financing. I've had loan officers buy properties that are looking for alternative financing because sometimes the only financing available to realtors and loan officers is like a business bank statement loan at 7.75%. And they're looking at their spouse going, we're not buyers at 7.75.
Right.
But at 4.99, Kelly, let's write up an offer, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And as I sit here and think about it, what a safe investment for, she's an accountant. We already know that. And he's a professor. And so if they are thinking of moving out of the country, having that steady income, of almost $2,200 a month, they might say, hey, we'd be happy to do 5 years. We'd be happy to do 7 years because, they have the proceeds from the sale of their other property that they'll be using to purchase. So it's just a great, safe way to have somebody. I know that's not what you want to hear because you guys want to do the refinance in the future, but it is a wonderful investment tied to real property in California. I think it's just a win-win all day.
I think, Kelly, we can even show the next step of this. I mean, this couple, if they were looking to purchase another home, as you mentioned, then we can show how that 2181 offsets their next mortgage. So that's another layer that I can absolutely show if you'd like to go into that.
Great. Yeah. Well, these particular customers are actually moving out of the country, but I know that we have a list of customers. What I started doing, Ryan, is I started asking at every single listing presentation, what is your current interest rate? It's like the first question I ask now because I want to know if a seller in this market can take advantage of this program, and we're getting that information. And the other thing is that we are really utilizing with our buyers the opportunity to have you call those listing agents and see if they would be interested in a seller wrap for those properties that have been on the market for a really long time. So I think we should do a follow-up episode to this. And that was a lot of information that we just kind of gave the consumer or other real estate agents. But I would like to maybe do the next leg, like, okay, you've got your proceeds. Now, how does that work as a separate follow-up video? What do you think?
I love it. We'll be happy to do that.
Well, from my clients that you just are about to get their house in contract, I want to personally thank you. To our viewers, is there anything else that you would like to add or you want them to know about your company?
I think the biggest thing that I would like to point out is that just because somebody offers seller financing doesn't mean they're moving forward with it. This is a huge marketing tool that you are already benefiting from, and so is your listing. And we want to really lean into that. As a 48% of all the transactions that we market end up in a traditional sale. So don't discount. I encourage agents and sellers, don't discount the power of the marketing on how we help arrive at lower than market interest rates, whether if it's through seller financing or sometimes it's the sellers buying down the interest rate. But it gets buyer conversations going. We really look for the opportunity to work with everybody. If you have a listing that if you're a seller and you have a listing, you want us to take a look at it, email us at mylisting@moresellerfinancing.com. mylisting@moresellerfinancing.com, just with your contact information and your address. We'll run a pass fail on it, and then we'll be in touch to discuss and go over an overview of, is this a good program for you or your sellers? And then we'll talk about how to market it, what those next steps are, and how we get an opportunity to work together.
Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate all your time and creativity. I know you're definitely helping our customers here. And I just want to say thanks so much.
You bet, Kelly. Really appreciate the opportunity to chat and obviously work together. And I'm so happy about the activity that you're seeing on your listing. And I know that's the first of many. We obviously have, I guess 3 or 4 more in the pipe with you. And so we're excited about that.
Great. Thanks. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, you bet. And if you have any, if you're a seller out there that has a stale listing, or you'd like for us to take a look at this, or if you're an agent that has some stale listings and you're trying to figure out how to revitalize them, go ahead and click on the QR code or take a picture of the QR code. It'll just ask you to fill out the address, and then me and my team will be back in touch with you on we'll give an overview, we'll run a quick pass fail, and then we'll figure out what the best way to move forward and is more a good marketing program and tool for you in today's market.
And if you're local to the Sacramento and surrounding areas and you'd like a complimentary evaluation on your home, I would love to help you. Or if you're a buyer shopping and you want to take advantage of what Ryan talked about earlier with those lower interest rates, reach out to me directly. I can be reached at hello@teamnavigate.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.